Welcome to Thriving Room. Mal de coucou, a phenomenon in which you have an active social life, but very few close friends with whom you can be yourself. A form of acute social malnutrition in which even if you devour an entire buffet of chit-chat, you'll still feel pangs of hunger. From the Dictionary of Obscure Sorrows, this showed up in a report I read from Nonfiction Research. The study was an extremely emotional one about how many Americans are starving for deeper connections with others and the unexpected behaviors that we take as a result. When Nonfiction Research describes its work as emotionally moving, they mean it. For example, the team elicits responses from the people they study, such as, "My father explains life to me better than anyone I have ever encountered. Anytime I'm down and out, he has the innate ability to make me feel full of worth and purpose, even in the toughest times. He explains how I'm worth it and what I need to do to continue feeling and knowing my true value." Please note that if you go and read this report, the opening chapters may trigger a difficult emotional response in some readers. Today, I have the honor of speaking with Ben Zeidler, co-founder of Nonfiction Research. As the company states, Nonfiction believes that there is a life hidden beneath what people share with market researchers. Nonfiction brings its uncensored approach to clients through research sprints, deep studies, and talks. Before co-founding Nonfiction, Ben was global head of consumer packaged goods research at L2, which was acquired by Gartner Research, where he worked directly with some of the world's largest consumer brands, including Procter & Gamble, Unilever, and Nestlé. Prior to L2, he worked at 10th Wave, where he established the research and analytics practice and grew it in revenue annually. Ben is on the advisory board at Harvard Business Review and is routinely quoted and featured in industry news. He is a graduate of Georgetown University. Ben, tell us in your words, what is your life's work and how you came to be doing this?
I run a research company called Nonfiction Research. Nonfiction.co is the URL. I always joke that the M cost another like $98,000. So it's nonfiction.co. And I'm a co-founder there with Gunny Scarfo, who I met, I'd say 10 years ago now. And we worked at an agency together that got bought by Accenture when they were snatching up digital agencies. We had talked about doing a research shop together for years and years. At one point, we even tried to do it like as part of the agency we were at, but that got shut down. And then after that, Gunny went to Vice. I went to L2, where Scott Galloway was leading the charge. So we both kind of got those under our belts. You know, we always had this desire to start a research company together that would do a little bit better than we felt most market and consumer research does. So I think if you spend any time with research decks, you know, you see a good one every once in a while, and we can talk about who else is doing good research, but most of the time they're boring, they're surface level. It's things that you would probably have a hunch of just by understanding a little bit about the category, and you don't really feel like they're getting into like the deeper parts of people's emotions. And then the scary part is that you have billion-dollar companies or nonprofits who are doing really good work in some cases, who do not have $1 billion but have a really important mission, but they're operating off of these documents that are just not that good. Everybody has them. It's the surface level kind of insights that I was talking about. Like they're not good fodder for great strategy. And so Gunny and I had started doing some of this like nonfiction-y research at the agency, interviewing people we weren't supposed to interview and blowing up survey constructions. And we thought, well, maybe there's a market for this. Maybe there's a market for people who want research that goes beyond what you would expect from a research company. So our big piece that we started the company with is called Secret Financial Lives of Americans. And if you look at that, I feel like everybody has read like a Future of Financial Services 2020 or 20, well, now it's 2021, maybe 2025. You've read those, right? And they're all kind of the same. They're like talking mobile checking and whatever. Okay, fine. And then you read ours and it just feels like a totally different thing. And we could talk a little bit about why that is. But the whole goal of the company is to just do research in a more human way that's ultimately more valuable to the people reading it. And the way that you do that is you get in really close with people. You don't stay on the surface level. You get to know them. You get to know their lives. You become a part of their lives in some instances. And we think that leads to better stuff. So that's it. That's the company. All we do is research. I love that. People always ask, like, is this a strategy company? Like, nope. We do, we do some like innovation consulting things from time to time, but it's really meant to be a research company. That's what we set out to create, was, the world's most unusual research company. And I feel like we've done it.
I absolutely agree from reading your research that it has an unusual way of getting close to the people you are
Yeah.
studying
Yeah.
and making us, as consumers of the research, feel that proximity. When you and Gunny knew that you wanted to build a business together, how sure were you that it had to be a research company?
We knew we wanted to do this. We did. We petitioned a managing director at the shop that became Accenture to let us like literally lift the company out of the company, take everybody's salaries with us, and we would give them right of first refusal on any projects. Like we got that far. And that managing director, who we love, who eventually became an investor in nonfiction, was like, please go back to your desks. We didn't know that he had been trying to sell the agency, and our department was obviously part of that sale. That sale ended up going through, and that kind of became the launch point for Gunny and I to leave. But we had talked about this forever. We tried to do it as part of the agency, then we tried to do it like surreptitiously at the agency. We not surreptitiously, but we would try to like bend projects to the way that we wanted to do them. And then the whole time we were L2 and Vice, it went away a little bit there because I think we were both happy at two really interesting places. Gunny was at Vice. I'm with Scott Galloway. So we kind of kept in touch, and we were like, all right, well, when's the time right? When's the time right? And then Vice went through some changes that have been well publicized. L2 was bought by Gartner, and I had started at Forrester, so I had done the publicly traded research thing. And so it just kind of came together where Gunny was ready to leave Vice. I was ready to leave L2, and I was really close to going to RGA, which is a shop that I love and adore. But Gunny and I had a phone call, and we are like, all right, if we're going to do this, let's do it. And then we both pulled the trigger, which involved not just quitting our jobs, but raising a little bit of capital to kind of get us going, which we did. So that was 2018, 19, 2018. So that was it. It was always the plan. And we've been scheming at it for 6 years. How are we going to pull this thing off? And we did it. We got it done.
What fears did you have, if any, when you were both taking this leap?
Yeah, it was terrifying. So the same person who was the managing director, who we tried to get us, to let us take the company, who eventually later became an investor in nonfiction. We went out to lunch with him right before we like pulled the trigger, and we knew we were going to do it, but I think we wanted somebody to tell us like, this is okay and you should do it. And he has started, I don't know, probably 3 or 4 companies. So we felt like he would give us the answer that we wanted, which was like, go for it. It was interesting. He talked about people who have jobs. The job relies on another company, on somebody else. They have a boss. They can be fired. The company can go through a downturn. And he said, you guys are afraid to leap right now, but I have to tell you, there's other people who think that they're standing on solid ground, but they're really not. If you go out and you create something for yourself, it's stressful and you'll have tough moments. And certainly we've had those, but you will always know where you stand. And that's true. Like Gunny and I can look at a spreadsheet and scroll way into the future when the dollars turn red if we don't sell any research for 5 years, and say, all right, well, that's where I get fired by myself. And so that was kind of an interesting thing, right? Like you associate job security with big companies, but really creating your own kind of job security is I don't know, just like a different ballpark. And I know that not everybody can do that, and it's not accessible. We had certain things go our way. We had some luck with investors. We had some luck. We've had a lot of luck, to be honest with you, but obviously worked hard too. The time was right, and we felt like the risk was not nothing, but it was minimal, because we felt like we could always go back. We felt like we could always go back and get a job somewhere else if it didn't work out. It wasn't without risk. I think I have 2 boys now and a third on the way. I think at least Fitz was born. My first one was born, and Gunny, I believe, had his daughter. So we each had a kid, and we're like quitting our jobs, our good jobs, to go start a company. We actually we sat our wives down. We took our wives out to dinner and like presented over Thai food. We presented like the vision for how we were going to get paid our market salaries at some point in the future, and how we were going to manage like the stress levels of running a business. Like it was funny. You had to think about it from the whole perspective of, like your life and your spouse and your kids. It's not just like, oh, what do I want to do? It was a lot bigger than that.
Was that one Thai dinner sufficient to convince your spouses?
Yeah, they knew, they were convinced after the Thai dinner, but and it was a good choice. It's one of my wife's favorite restaurants in Hoboken. But they knew we were going to do this, and we've all been pretty close for a while. So to me, this was like a little bit of a formality, but you still wanted them to say it's okay, you guys can do this. And I think for our wives, it meant that they wouldn't take certain chances. So my wife is, in addition to working at Audible, is a writer, and she recently got her MFA or is finishing the MFA program now. I'm sure she put that off because we did nonfiction. So time a couple does something or somebody in a couple does something, there's a sacrifice that somebody else makes. So honestly, I think it was less about them signing off on me and Gunny doing what we were going to do and more about, are they willing to give us a turn, and then do they trust us that we'll give them a turn back when the time is right. And sometimes that's a bad bet for couples, but it worked out for us.
What are your thoughts on when your wife does get a turn?
Yeah, well, I think she got it a little bit. She is at the tail end of her MFA now, so she did apply and get in, and she's been doing the program. The other thing that she's big into is writing, and so she actually just got her first agent. She's working with the Knight Agency, so she's working on a book that hopefully will come out next year. So she's cruised along, and it's still probably not her turn yet. Like this is probably, I have probably not given her a full turn, but she's trucked along and gotten a lot of things accomplished anyway. And but you're right, Wazoo. I probably owe her more than an edible arrangement. I owe her a couple years. So, but I love being at home with the kids, so I'm open to it. She's going to hear this, and I'm going to tell her, please sell books so I can be at home with the kids.
Hold you accountable.
Yeah, bring it on.
I am curious to know about your desire to know where you stand. Starting a company for you helps you do that. At certain times, people feel that knowing where they stand is a burden, it weighs on them. At other times, people may feel that knowing where they stand gives them agency.
Yeah.
What circumstances do you see at play that make one happen versus the other at any given time?
Yeah, I do think it's probably a way that people are wired in most cases. I hate to say it, like a nature versus nurture thing, but I think by the time I'm 33, by the time you're 33, I either think you're going to go get after it or not. Elon Musk was in a clubhouse last night, and I know those are two like trigger words for a lot of people, but I get it. I get it. But he did say something that I thought was interesting, and he said somebody asked him about like words of encouragement for an entrepreneur, and he was like, if you need words of encouragement, you probably aren't gonna like you shouldn't be relying on words of encouragement from Elon Musk in the clubhouse, right? You should have something in you that is like, I think, a little off, that doesn't like what most people are doing. Like I think one of the reasons we do great research is that I think most other research is poor. I think it's poorly done. I have like disdain for it, and I wish people would stop doing it. It's the same way that like Jon Stewart yelled at Tucker Carlson in 2004 for like doing bad journalism, right? And he was like, "Stop hurting America." Jon Stewart presumably really loves America, and I'm not trying to get political. I'm just saying like his hatred for both those guys, or disdain for both those guys, I should say, not hatred, but the other one, Paul Begala, I think, was like a registered Democrat, was that they weren't doing it right. They weren't doing journalism the way that it was supposed to be done. They were making a mockery of the thing. You either have that thing in you or not, where you watch somebody else do it, and it's something you're good at, and you feel like they are not doing it the right way or to the best of their ability. It's not even right or wrong. It's more about like, are they doing it with like their full good faith? I don't know. When I see that, it makes me want to go do it better. It makes me want to go do what they're doing, but just do it way better. I kind of think people either have that like drive in them or not, where something being done poorly bothers you, but then you want to take that next step. Like, do you want to take that next step? Do you want to create an action? I think about Justin Finkelstein, who I think you know a little bit too, who was at a city for a while running their tech innovation center. Justin, from the time he doesn't like something to the time he starts trying to figure it out, is like 2 seconds. No delay, right? And I have a little bit more delay than Justin, but I think that people who are successful don't have a big delay. They don't sit around and think about it. It doesn't mean you can't be thoughtful. It doesn't mean you can't make plans, but you need to be making stuff. Did you see Rachel Mercer's announcement on Proto, the design innovation consultancy?
No.
So Rachel Mercer and a couple other folks left RGA, I don't know, a couple months ago. They're starting sort of an innovation consultancy, super interesting stuff. Right there in the press release, they're talking about how like true innovation is the act of making something and putting it out into the world and seeing how it works. Say what you will about nonfiction or me or Gunny, we are constantly making things and then getting people's reactions to them. And sometimes people like it, sometimes they don't. But I think it's that act of making something and putting it out there that is what most people lack. So just to wrap up that answer, what I would say is if somebody is listening and they feel like that they don't have that extra kick or that extra drive, or they haven't had success in the past, I would ask, like, have you been making and distributing things? Because I think that is the best way to get better, is to just be an active creator and to put yourself out there. I think it's really hard. Long way to get there, but that's it. You gotta be in the arena.
When we put ourselves out there and play in the arena, we increase our encounters with all sorts of feedback, including positive reinforcement and constructive feedback. To what extent have you transcended feeling negatively at all when you get constructive feedback?
No, I still take it personally, and I do, and we get negative feedback from time to time, and it's going to happen. And you're right, like the more you put yourself out there, like God bless Chrissy Teigen, is there a tweet she posts? It could be about a chocolate bar, and somebody hates her for eating the chocolate bar. It's really tough, right? You can't never it gets 100%. A lot of times people do like our stuff, but you always get the rare complaints. We try to decide if the complaint is in good faith or if it's not in good faith. There are some questions that we've gotten that I think were in good faith, that were around like the ethics of research, and the ethics of interviewing people like bank robbers and male and female escorts, which is what we did for our intimacy report. And like, are we being exploitative of those people? That's a criticism that I'm happy to talk about and I want to kick around. And I think we probably don't get that right 100% of the time. I can't imagine anyone gets that right 100% of the time, but I'm open to the criticism, and I have a desire to get closer to 100% every time we do research. So like that kind of criticism, bring it on, because it stings, because you think you're a good person and you like to believe you're trying to like take all points of view into account. But I'm okay with it because I think it's good faith criticism, and I think it will make our stuff better. Sometimes the criticism's not good faith criticism. We actually piss off a lot of academics, which is funny because I come from a pretty quanty background. Like, I was at Forrester writing surveys and doing the data cuts and SPSS and like running like p-value tests. Like, I don't know, I'm not a scrub. I don't know, but they seem to get like a little bit up in arms, or they're like, this would never get published because of this thing. And I'm like, well, we published it. I didn't need to send it to an academic journal. Like, and I don't know if that's like they wish they would like to write more stuff like us, or they're mad, or they think it's pop research. I don't know, but like, I don't know. The stuff's really not pop research. The methodology is something we take really, because we're interviewing bank robbers and escorts and doing all these like wild things. You have to make sure the methodology is on point, or else you will become pop research. So I think if anything, we're like, you can already hear my like email back to this academic. If anything, I think we are more conscientious of not running afoul of statistical and mathematical principles than other research or innovation shops, because of that, because we need to. So anyway, yes, we get criticism. Some of it's founded, some of it's not, but nothing's been too bad yet. I'm waiting. You know it's coming. The more we write about different things, so here's the next one, Wazoo. We have a piece coming up in like 2 weeks that's on journalism and polarization. Ask me again in 3 weeks if I've taken heat, because I think we're going to take some heat. And we're doing a lot of talking about bias in the media, and narrative warfare, and all those fun topics. And so we'll see. Keep you posted.
I appreciate when you declared, we published it, since the existing structures in academia did not give room for you to publish this research that you found innovative. You created your own arena. That is an empowering message.
It's my favorite part of nonfiction, I would have to say, because we pick the topics. There's nobody attached to them. We get to write about whatever we want. Like, we're writing a report coming up on New York City, the value proposition of New York City. Gunny, my co-founder, was a college buddy of Andrew Yang's. And when Andrew decided he was running for mayor of New York City, which he is now, he called Gunny and he said, the whole value proposition of New York City has changed. And Gunny was like, oh, great, we could write a report about that. That's a very unusual thing to just be able to say, well, you know what, maybe that would make a good report. And it costs money to do these, but we believe in them and they're just so fun. I mean, yes, they're good for new business. Yes, they're good for press. Yes, they're good to flex our research muscles and get creative, but they are just fun to put together. So we got the journalism and polarization one coming up. That's by Lindsay Waking. Nicole Swedberg, who's one of our newest strategists, is working on one on the corporate state of hiring, which I think is going to be fantastic. And then Gunny's working on New York. I'm going to write one. I don't even know what I'm going to write it about, but I love the freedom of saying okay, what's important to me right now? What do I think deserves more attention than it's been getting? And we love it because we don't have to wait for someone to commission it. No one's paying for the value prop of New York City. Sorry, Gunny. I love you and I love your report. But I love that he wants to do it, and it's going to be a great report. And let's see what it is. I think that's a beautiful thing if you can pull it off.
I cannot wait to read the research that you have coming out.
Great. Yeah, it's going to be fun.
Tell us a little bit more about your decisions. When you do have this much free reign, what factors influence your topics?
It's hard. There are a lot of topics that are interesting that don't make the cut. There are other ones that we think would probably be on Good Morning America tomorrow that also don't make the cut. So it's hard because you're trying to straddle this world of yeah, we would like it to get some PR, but it needs to fit a couple criteria. So the first one is that there needs to be some interesting gap between public and private lives that's worth looking at. So you see that in the intimacy report. You saw it in Secret Financial Lives. You saw it in Playlist. There's some delta between the way people are acting in public versus what's going on in their private lives. That's number one. I think that's core to nonfiction. Anything we do for clients, I think on some level of depth deals with that issue. So that's number one. Two, it needs to be at least plausible that someone would write about it. Not hire us. They don't have to hire us. We don't care if the city of, I don't want to pick on anybody. What city do I love? Miami. We don't care if Mayor Suarez hires us down in Miami to write about Miami, but even though that would be nice. But it needs to be at least plausible that a journalist would care enough about the topic to write about it. So that's two. It doesn't have to have broad media appeal, but you can't write about something so bizarrely niche that no one would truly care. And then the third rule is that you, as the writer, have to love the topic. We tried a couple times where we're we should really write about that thing. Felt more like a chore than something that we wanted to do. So people were asking us all last year, when are you going to do the COVID report? When are you going to do the COVID report? We're I don't know. It certainly does feel like we should write something about COVID, but we debated for months to try to come up with a topic, but nobody really fell in love with the topic. It felt like we were doing it because we were supposed to do it. And that's not the formula for a good nonfiction report. So if Gunny wasn't doing the New York report, nobody would do that report. Nobody would write that. We wouldn't know. I wouldn't know where to start. Gunny's reading E.B. White. E.B. White wrote a beautiful piece on New York City. Gunny's reading that every night before he goes to bed. That's what Gunny's DNA is about, right? Gunny's lived in New York City for 25 years. He moved there. He moved there for college. He stayed there. He raised a family there. That's in his bones. Gunny has to write about New York. Can't write about anything. And so that's kind of the thing that we look for is do you have to write about that topic? And if so, then we'll bless the project and nonfiction with as many dollars as we can afford to make the thing awesome. And that's kind of it. So that's how we look at it. That's the actual litmus test. You got that right from that's internal handbook stuff there, Wazoo.
Yes, and let's also make sure Mayor Suarez hears this.
Yes. Yeah. We've been chatting with his team a little bit. They're an interesting group down there. They're doing some really good work. So more to come on the Mayor Suarez front. I'll keep you posted there. Try to get all the mayors. We'll get Yang and Suarez together. That'll be fun.
Now there are so many COVID reports. I do not want to read another COVID report. I would rather read about intimacy in America or the secret playlists that people have. It's funny how when we take the mindset of let's write about what we should write about, you might enter a crowded space. And when you tune into what the team cares for, you come up with these topics that allow you to create your own category.
Right. It's such a better place. And we're not writing traditional stuff, right? It's not verticals. There's no travel report, even though that would be fun. and I was doing a lot of travel stuff at Forrester, but we have this weird eclectic mix. And like sometimes people will be like, what verticals do you cover? And I'm like, we're so far away from verticals, I can't even begin to tell you. But that's exactly right. We will write something that somebody else wants us to write, obviously with our own like research integrity and independence, in exchange for money. That's the business. And if it's something that we're not getting paid for, then we really have to want to do it. You know what I mean? Like I feel like we write reports all the time on other people's topics, and we love that. That's how we stay in business. Those reports are great. We've done some amazing work with Disney and Viacom and AIG, and doing some cool stuff with Marcus at Goldman right now. We're thrilled to take those on, but when it comes time for our own reports, like we want to write about our own stuff, you know? And a lot of times that is not the COVID report. That is not the traditional, like what you would expect kind of stuff. I hope the folks at Nonfiction, the strategists on our team, we have a few of them now. I hope that that's like that is one of the non-monetary perks that they enjoy most, is the freedom to write. And I see that a lot in strategy, where if people weren't strategists, Gunny talked about this on podcast with Mark Pollard a couple days ago. The people who become strategists, they weren't going to become account directors if they weren't strategists. They were going to be writers. They were going to go get a master's in psychology. It's that kind of mindset.
You have an independence of thought and an ability to activate it using the drive that you mentioned earlier. When was the earliest time that you recall noticing your independence of thought?
That was later in life. It wasn't cool to be weird in elementary school, middle school, high school. I don't think so. Not really. I have friends, but I just didn't think it was that, being like really obsessed about a topic, like wasn't like, didn't get you a lot. But I think when you leave college, there's more of a meritocracy around that. And I think the best ideas and the best thinkers are kind of a little weird and have a screw loose or something a little bit off in them. I really do. I think that's there's good things that come of that, about like a rewiring of the brain or a miswiring of the brain. And so later, definitely later, I mean, like in the last 5 or 6 years, I kind of just got to this point where I'm truly unconcerned with what people think about what we're doing. Just want to make good stuff and break things and put them back together and keep trying to do something unique and new and interesting. Yeah, that came later. I think I always was that person, probably. I had to get a little bit older to realize that was going to become more of an asset the older I got.
To what degree is Gunny similar in this way? What do you do when you have conflicts?
We fight clean. Like, and we don't even fight. Fight's not the right word. Gunny and I have had like 0 disagreements in 8 years. It is a meritocracy in the company, and that goes down to Lindsay and Nicole and Jenny and Danny and everybody that we work with. You have to fight for your idea and prove it in the arena of nonfiction, or you don't get to do it. Gunny and I have a discussion every day on something where we're on 2 sides of it. We're on different sides of it, or adjacent sides, but like not quite aligned. And we just go back and forth. It's like a really like lazy tennis match. When we were in the same city, we would literally stand in a room and kick a soccer ball back and forth to each other while talking. We would do this for like 3 hours. And most decisions do not take 3 hours, but big ones do. But anyway, we will just go back and forth, and we'll just debate a thing until somebody makes the winning point. And sometimes it's really fast. Like Gunny will say something to me, and I realize immediately, like, of course Gunny is right about this thing, and he's still talking, and I'm cutting him off and going, no, I'm done. No, you got it. It's fine. Yep. It's you. You're right. Let's do it. So you have to have that mentality. And I don't know what people do when they don't have co-founders. I really don't. And then a healthy co-founder relationship on top of it is like a huge cherry. But I don't know what you do without a co-founder, without somebody to bounce ideas off of, to go back and forth with. If you have a co-founder, I don't know how you do that. How are you married to somebody that you can't quickly disagree with, come to a good consensus, and then go and then roll with that? I don't know how companies get better faster. Like Gunny and I are putting each other through the things that clients put us through all the time, but we are doing it constantly. We're doing like 100 repetitions a day on it, right? And just naturally by talking. So by the time we get to the client or we get to the academic or whatever, like a lot of times we've had that discussion. We've played it out. We are like deeply paranoid probably of like doing anything that isn't awesome work. So we are constantly beating up the ideas. We're constantly debating. We want to get it to the best place. We want to have thought of every angle. Of course, you never truly can, but we make such a good effort at it that I don't know. I think it comes out. I think it comes out in the product. I think it comes out in the way we talk to people. Like we beat it up. We beat it up really good. We're the odd couple, but we're a great couple.
Sure sounds like you two know how to have high stakes and impassioned conversations in a very healthy way. How did you learn how to do this?
I think a lot of it did come from Gunny. Gunny is 10 years older than me, and I think he's seen a lot of it. So I'm sure that I take a lot of cues from Gunny in terms of how to do that. I'm sure there's things I do that like are I don't even realize that I do them because of him. So that's a big part of it. My parents are both public school teachers, or were public school teachers before they retired. I think that helps. When you teach 10,000 students over a lifetime, which my mom did, my dad's probably close, you understand the rules of interaction between people. You've seen enough. Like you'll hear me talk a ton about repetitions. Gunny and I, it's something we talk all the time about is getting enough reps in. Well, my mom got reps in with 10,000 students, watching them argue, fight, get back together, be happy, be sad, all the emotions that go through, 16-year-olds. She got to see that over the course of 35 years over and over and over and over. So by the time she had me, which was relatively later in her life, she's still alive, but relatively later in her life, she'll like that. She'll like that line that I clarified that. She was able to impart some of that stuff on me, right? She was like, "Oh, don't do that. Like, nobody will like you." Like, all right, go tuck that one away. So I don't know. I feel like my parents have always been really pragmatic about telling me like what is okay and what's not, and how to be in a society, how to be in a classroom, how to be in a company, how to exist. And don't you kind of feel like a lot of people didn't get that memo when they were like 13? Like they never got the memo on how to be with other people. I kind of do. Like I see people all the time. I'm like, oh my god, who told you to do that? That's a terrible idea. It's horrible. So I feel like they gave me a lot of memos earlier, and I read the memos, and I'm better for it.
I grew up in New York City going to public schools.
Yeah, you know what it is.
I have many teachers that I'm extremely thankful for. I wonder if this influences the way that you think about raising your family.
Yeah, it's interesting. I still have a little chip on my shoulder from going to public school. I don't know if you do, but I have this little like air of I don't know, like I'm not supposed to be here necessarily, but I am. I like that. It's interesting because my wife went to some good private schools in New Jersey. We've had an interesting like intersection of educational philosophies in our house. Part of it is like me talking about like I don't know what I'll call loosely like street smarts, like how to get around a public school without. And our kids are in daycare, like in Montessori right now, so we haven't even made that call yet on public versus private. I am talking about like how to get around stuff or how to survive things or whatever, like skills I still want them to have. And then sometimes I think my wife is like, what the hell happened in your public school? Like, and at her school, I think I do think at times her school, maybe more than at times, her schools were more supportive. I went to a good school. I don't want it to sound like they weren't supportive of this, but the private schools are extremely supportive of kids who are different. They're extremely supportive of what are traditionally called smart kids. And you and I both know that like it wasn't always cool to be smart in public school. That didn't always like work out great. And so I think she sees smartness as a thing to be celebrated, which it is, but I see it as a thing to like well, figure out when to use that. Maybe you're not smart all the time. Like you got to really like hedge. And I think she's like, "What are you doing? Like, just it's okay, And that was not always my experience, especially early on. It was okay to be smart, and so that's the difference in philosophy. There is like I'm very well attuned to that, but in a way that like I don't know, I'm like probably slightly broken about like what it takes to succeed in school. And I bet schools are a lot different than they were outside of Philadelphia in the early 90s. That was probably a different story.
What I think about that I haven't reconciled yet is I do feel fortunate. I went to a high school that was a very excellent school. I do think that I went into college and professional life missing being surrounded by academics would call the discourse of power, being around people who are the heads of
Mm-hmm.
companies, who work in high levels of government. It felt like I had to catch up. There's a lot of catch up work to do that I feel like when you go to these private schools or especially boarding schools, you get to be surrounded by that from very young age.
Totally. Yeah. Spot on. I mean, I didn't have any of it. I didn't know what that was. Like all my friends' parents did kind of stuff that my parents did. And I agree. And then going to Georgetown, everybody went to a private school and they just do have a little bit more polish on them and they know how to study. Like, I did not work very hard to get a 3.7 in high school. And I worked very hard to get a 3.1 at Georgetown. Like, it was tough. It was really tough. And Katie, my wife, who went to Georgetown too, that's where we met. She will say, I think she'd say this, that Georgetown was easier than her high school. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't even imagine. Like, I was playing poker in the back of a statistics class, an AP stats class in 12th grade. Like, I barely worked and I walked out with a 3.7. Like, I can't imagine college being easier than high school, but I think that's the difference, right? For her, college was easier. For me, college was like, oh my God, what a wake up call, right? So I agree. There's stuff to be done. Um, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that one. I don't know how you get that on your own when you're 17. I think that's hard.
I'd like to pick back up on this expression you had that you have disdain for people who continue to follow the status quo. How does this factor in when you need to work with them?
Yeah, I mean, I try not to work with them. I don't know. I know I'm like too hard on people. We hire the best people in the world. I sound like Donald Trump when I say it. We hire the best, but we do try to hire the best people, and then I don't have to worry about it because I know that they're really smart and they're doing good work, and a lot of them are way smarter than me, and I don't have to worry about it. So, and I think our clients are really smart too. I think our clients are great, and they kind of opt into nonfiction because they see something in nonfiction that is a part of them. I think some of the most nonfiction-y people in the world are the ones who hire us. So I don't know. It might not factor in that much, other than I know. No, I guess I like that they exist because then we have a comparison point to something else. So that's useful to me. It's good to know where that is. But I don't know. I don't look at them that much. Like, I just don't. I'm so rarely impressed with other research that I just kind of tune it out or turn it off when I see it. Like, I just kind of stop. I'll still read, one piece a week or something from somebody else, but where you see clients, when you start working with them, we ask for the research that's been done in the past so we get a really good feel for what's been done. But I don't know. I try to not let the disdain stop me from being a good person and being friendly with them on Twitter and being helpful to them when I can be helpful. But I don't know. I don't. I don't have a ton of use for people who are doing something that they shouldn't be doing. And in a lot of cases, I feel like that person should be doing something else. Chris Rock has a great quote. He's like, "You can do anything you want as long as you're good at it," and they're hiring. And a lot of people, I think, should be doing something else. Like, if you talk to most people, there's a second thing they'd be doing if it wasn't the thing they're doing now. Everyone has a second thing, right? I want to know what yours is in a second. And I think a lot of people pick the wrong thing. They picked the first thing. They should have picked the second thing. And so I look at it as like, you're wasting my time, which, like, I hate. And I know how this sounds, but you're wasting your own time. You're wasting your own talent. And I think some of the people who are doing bad blank, you name it, research, strategy, creative, whatever, a lot of them are like great humans. And I wish they would do something else. I wish they would do something that they were great at that also helped people in some way. So I don't know. I know that's kind of like a horrible misanthropic answer that gives you some flavor to me, but that's really what I think. Go do something else.
I would like to be an actress. I need to figure out how to start. I have no connections to this. I started taking a class a few weeks ago. I'm curious about it. It's very much comes from this deep, all of these projects I'm doing now, podcasting, it's all related to I want to engage with human emotions.
Mm.
And that is one way to do it. It's an art form that I appreciate. I'm excited to learn. Always welcome to anybody who has advice or resources. Very happy to find out more.
Cool. But you're doing it. Like, that's what we talked about earlier. You took the class. And what was it like on the first time you took that class, when you walked into that room? What was that like?
Oh, it was completely not what I
Right.
expected because, whoa, whoa, whoa. First of all, I've never learned how do you even breathe? Breathe through your diaphragm, being aware of your body and what are the impulses that are holding you back. These fundamental practices that I never even thought about. So it was completely not what I expected and thrilling.
I love that. Thrilling, right? how many times a day, a month, a year, do, do people get to say that they did something that was truly thrilling to them? And you signed up and you went, you had a thrilling experience. I mean, like, isn't that that's the whole point, right? I love that.
We all start somewhere. If we pay attention, as you're saying, to what really gives us energy, gives us the feelings that we're chasing in a way as humans, then we can find what we should be doing.
That's it. I can't say it better than that.
Do you have a second thing, or you're doing it?
No, well, I think I'm doing the thing I'm supposed to be doing. I really do. I think this was it. I think I chose correctly because I've been able to do it. I've been able to do this for 12 years now. I've been able to support a family on it. I've never gotten fired from a job that I'm aware of. So I feel like it was a good choice, right? Like proofs in the pudding. It worked out, and I'm so happy doing it too. But my second thing, if this, I don't want to say if this didn't work out because I don't think I would have done this thing, but the thing that I always come back to, the job I always come back to, and I know the public perception of this has changed in the last few years, so I want to acknowledge that. But the thing that I always came back to was being a police officer. And I think I saw that as sort of analogous to my parents, like being a member of the community. But what I loved about it was the freedom, which you're now like 6-year-old Ben, like definitely wanted to be a cop. And I love the idea of like a beat where, I don't know, I'd just be going around. I'm getting paid the whole time, right? I'm going around,
Uh-huh.
check in. How you doing, Mrs. Johnson? Down the street, get a coffee. Maybe somebody's doing something they're not supposed to be doing. Please stop, and just go about my day. But it's like there's an autonomous quality to it, or I suspect there is, that I dug from an early age. I thought like, oh my God, this is the greatest job ever. Like you get to decide what you want to do. I know it's not that glamorous now, but I do think the freedom part is really interesting because what did I talk for 20 minutes about like the freedom of being able to write whatever research papers we want. I think that idea of freedom was like clearly important to me from an early age. And I've always liked jobs where I felt like I had my own agency, where I wasn't time tracking, where I didn't have to be in a certain spot at a certain time of day. Like I'm very happy to work hard. I love work and I love working. I love the act of working. I think it's great, for me at least. But it doesn't mean I don't want to do it on my time and that I don't want to work on things in the order I want to work on them on. So anyway, police officer for me, I don't see it happening at this time. My wife will kill me.
Uh, so interesting because the very first person I interviewed, she is a technology professional who is an auxiliary
Okay.
police officer on the side.
Maybe I could
And
do that. That sounds
oh
good.
yeah, absolutely, you could do that. You and her, when I speak with you, both have this quality of being able to take any situation, figure out what is my role in this? What am I going to make myself into? For her, in one way, it manifested with she is starting a nonprofit outside of work that helps incarcerated people to learn computer networking skills, which she knows about personally. Being able to say, I want
Right.
autonomy, I'm willing to put in the work to use my autonomy to serve some purpose that I really care about.
Love that. It's perfect. Put it on the nonfiction website. I love it. That's it. That's it. That's what we wanted to create. That's what I wanted out of a job. I don't have anything to add to that. I think it's beautiful. It's certainly my philosophy, which is happy to work. Just let me design it. That's it.
Tell us more about the vision that you are seeing for yourself, personally and professionally.
Yeah, you're right to split it into personal and professional because they are kind of different things. So personally, I'll start there. It's the freedom of the company and the freedom of what technology sort of allows us to do. So before COVID, we didn't obviously know COVID was coming, but my wife and I spent 6 weeks down in the Keys with our two sons, and we worked down there the whole time. But we were able to be down there instead of in New Jersey for the winter. We were able to be down there, and it was great. I mean, over like a lunch break, I'm working the same hours, but instead of like going out for an hour at lunch in the New York office, I'm swimming in a pool with the kids for an hour. Like that's a way better hour break for me. Nonfiction was designed in mind to give not just like the owners of nonfiction, but anybody at nonfiction the freedom to do that. Like Lindsay spent significant amounts of time at home in St. Louis during COVID. Personally, that's what I want is the flexibility. And as we grow, I'm going to have to figure that out. Gunny and I are going to have to figure that out because there's going to be more that gets away from our control. The more people you add, the further away the tentacles go. And so that's where you need to rely on people like Lindsay to be like a second generation of leadership. But that's a whole nother bag of worms. Like, turning somebody into that who is a brilliant strategist, and then transforming them into both a strategist and a leader of people. It's just a different thing. But I think we're going to have to do it. One, if I can have the swim breaks that I want, but two, if we're going to grow, and I'm not saying we want to be some massive company, but in order to provide people with the lifestyles that they want, we're going to have to find out how to build layers within nonfiction that let us, the work has to serve the life, not the other way around. I know people talk about that a lot. Not nonfiction needs to power other stuff you want to do. That's it. It needs to be secondary to your life, your family, everything else you have going on. The second that you're living to serve the business, bad news bears. Personally, it's that freedom, it's that flexibility. Professionally, there's nothing that's off the table for me and Gunny. I don't think we have talked about, like, obviously we want to take on more clients. We'd like to take on longer projects because I think longer projects help us. We've had a repeat business, but I think longer projects help us do more damage in a good way with the client. So that's of interest to us. I also think impact-based organizations. So we've done some work already with the Ad Council around their fatherhood work. We've done some work with climate change organization called Potential Energy Coalition. So I'd love more of those. And it's even to the point that we've had like light talks about in a couple of years doing maybe a nonprofit arm, do like a nonfiction foundation kind of thing that would really be set up to take on nonprofit and impact-based projects. Like, we're not really set up for that right now. We can do it, but we're set up for big commercial organizations and agencies to come in and pay a handsome but fair sum of money for insights and recommendations about their business. Like, we're just not set up for that nonprofit sector. And in a lot of cases, we can't even go after those jobs because of our LLC status. So I would love to set up the actual instrument by which we could help those organizations. And you either do it pro bono, you do it at cost, whatever, you figure out the model, that's like the least of my concern. So if I'm looking 2-3 years ahead, I'm thinking like, okay, if I can have a flexible life, which is pretty flexible now, but if I can have more flexibility in my life, and we can be working on projects that we're truly proud of, that we think are making like a massive difference in people's lives tomorrow. And it's not to say the work we're doing with our clients isn't making a massive difference. It is, but it's on the scale of teachers and people's banking and things like that. It's not like clean water, it's different ball games. We'll make the money, right? Like Gunny and I will figure out ways to make money. We'll be fine. No one's going to starve. If you kind of know that, and I understand this is a luxury, but if you kind of know that you're not going to starve and you're not going to go out of business, then you get to have some fun. I think that's when like the fun really starts, and the mischief can come out, and you can decide, okay, how do I want to help people? In what ways do I want to do that? What's that look like in the shape of nonfiction? Like, how do I use the things we've already made to hit those goals? And so I think you'll see a lot of that from us in the next couple of years. Big mission-based impact stuff, maybe some interesting undercover stuff. We'll see. That's been another discussion that's been had. As you know, Nellie Bly is a big inspiration for us. It's the famous like ethnographer who went into an insane asylum, pretended to be insane so she could prove that they weren't treating the patients well. And it's like one of like the seminal works of investigative journalism. So you might see a little bit more out of that. Gunny could go to jail. I don't know. It's gonna be fun. I can tell you that. That's the one promise, is we're gonna have a lot of fun doing it.
Very exciting. A question I would like to leave on is, what are you grateful for today?
I have to say I'm really thankful for growing up in a good family. My parents bought me a computer when I was 13, and I talk about that a lot. And I don't think they could really afford that computer, because computers were like a big ticket purchase back in the day. Like a big Dell desktop back in 1998, like that might have cost you $2,000. I guarantee you, my parents did not have $2,000. My mom gave us haircuts until we were 18 to save money, right? Like that's what we were up to. So yeah, it's that. It's that family that knew that they were going to make a couple sacrifices here or there to give me some of the tools that I would need. And I guarantee you, too, that they did not know what was going to come of me having a computer, but presumably that it would be a net positive in my life. And
Hmm.
I really look at not just them, but like the computer thing obviously is like a big thing for me. I feel like we're in a therapy session now. That computer set off so much for me. Having access to that computer, being able to research, being able to understand, the world outside of Pennsylvania, which I had honestly not left a million times by then, handful. I don't know. It just opened up the whole thing. It was an evening of the playing field. The way we talked about it earlier, how we felt a little behind when you were at Harvard and I was at Georgetown, where we are like, oh, these kids are pretty good at this thing. That was an equalizer for me. That was a real equalizer. So I think that I'm so grateful for that computer, that huge Dell $2,000 computer back in 1999 or whenever it was. That thing was the spark for me. That was it.
Wow. That is beautiful. Dell should listen to this and sponsor this.
I will match. I will match a Dell computer. They got to give one, and I'll match it with nonfiction. This is a real offer. I will match a Dell computer if they do one. They give it to a school in need. Nonfiction will match Dell. So how about that? We'll buy some computers. Now they have to say yes, right?
Exactly. So glad that happened and allowed you to create nonfiction. I can't wait for the research you have coming up. I already know it's the type of research that when I read it, I just want to devour it. So I can't wait. We'll talk soon, Ben.
Wait till you see it. You're going to really enjoy it. I will send you a preview tonight. You can take a look. Thank you for having me. This was awesome.
Thanks, Ben.
Thanks, Lucy.
If you know someone at Dell or anybody who can help us make the offer that Ben extended happen, please get in touch with me. You can read all about nonfiction and read their studies at nonfiction.co. The team recently onboarded the woman who made that WAP deck that has gone around the internet. If you do not know what I mean by WAP, Google is your friend. Let's all look forward to the research that nonfiction has coming up, and if I'm lucky, I may get to interview Catherine next year, since that is when Ben said his wife's book will be coming out. Have fun in your arenas, and see you next time.